Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Maddie, and if you're new here, welcome. Today's video is going to be a Q&A about my job as a nurse, everything nursing that you guys have been asking, and I'm just super excited, you guys. I had no idea that nursing would be the avenue that I could help people through my YouTube channel, but it's definitely a huge part of my life, and there has not been one day that I've regretted going to nursing school or any of that. So we're taking another little break from Vlogmas today, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. I have had so many questions about my job as a nurse and what it is to be a nurse circulator in the operating room, and just so many questions about nursing school in general. So I'm so excited that you guys want to know about these things, and so let's just jump right in. Before we get started, you guys, if you would please hit the subscribe button down below and give this video a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it, and that way I know what you guys are liking and what you want to see more of. So let's jump into the video. Okay guys, so as I go through these on Instagram, I'm going to put the link to the person's account, whoever asked the question, up on the screen here so you guys know when I'm answering your questions. So this is from Carly Greenway, and she says, "How old are you? Love your videos." Thank you so much, Carly. I am 24 years old. I turned 25 in May. Carly also asked, what nursing school did you go to and how long did it take you to get in? So I went to school in Texas. I went to Texas Christian University, and I applied directly from high school into college. So I applied when I was 18, my senior year of high school, and at TCU you apply directly into the nursing program. So I was lucky enough to get right into the nursing program. I think it probably took, from the time I applied, I did early action application. I think maybe like 3 months later I found out that I got in, and that was early. So I think that was either in December or January. And then I made my decision a couple months later to go to TCU a couple months later. This is from Ari Willard. Did you go straight into working in the OR? So yes, I did. After graduating from college, so it took me 4 years to graduate. After graduating with my bachelor's of science in nursing, I took some time off. So I took like 8 months off. But after that, I went directly into the operating room. So my senior year at TCU, I'm not sure if every nursing program does this, but at TCU, they do a senior practicum. So the last 3 months of my senior year, I worked closely with another nurse. I worked her schedule for, I think it was a month, and went in every day and did exactly what she did, and she kind of trained me. So I was lucky enough to have mine be in the operating room. So you got to list your preferences, and mine were labor and delivery and operating room. So I was lucky enough to get right into the operating room, and that's where I gained the beginning of my experience in the operating room. So after graduating, I knew I wanted to do the operating room. So I started kind of thinking about where I wanted to be. I moved back home for a little while and lived with my parents and worked in a coffee shop, and kind of just took a little bit of time to myself to kind of figure out what exact type of nursing I wanted to do. And once I realized it was the operating room, I started applying for jobs, and in those 8 months I also met my boyfriend, who you guys have seen in Vlogmas if you've been keeping up. If not, I'll link all of those down below. But I met Ryan in that process, and then I ended up moving to Colorado, and I had some family friends that worked at this hospital that I now work at, and I got to go shadow her in the OR, and long story short, I ended up going right into the OR as my first nursing job. So another question Ari Willard asked is, how was it finding a job as a new grad and transitioning from student nurse to RN? So I was lucky enough to be hired into a program called Peri-Op 101, and this was a new graduate nurse residency program, or a residency program for nurses that maybe have been nurses for a few years and want to transition into the OR. So the OR is so specialized that we don't learn how to be an OR nurse in school. So we learn med surg, we learn psych, peds, adult 1, adult 2, geriatrics, all of that, but we don't necessarily talk about the OR in school. Coming out of school, I felt a lot of pressure to go right to the floor, because that's where we really need nurses, but actually OR needs nurses too, almost everywhere, because it is so specialized. But coming out of school, I really wanted the OR, and I knew that it was gonna be a stretch to get right into it because of the fact that it is so specialized. I I only had about a month of experience and it wasn't paid experience. And so I knew it was going to be challenging, but thankfully I applied to a residency program that trained me for 6 months on how to be an operating room nurse. So I think the key there is to look for hospitals that offer teaching opportunities or new graduate residency programs, because that's really the best way to get a job right after graduating, unless you want to work med-surg, night shifts, kind of like the grungy do your time work, which I felt very lucky that I didn't have to go through that. I just know myself and I knew that I didn't want to work nights. I knew med-surg wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be. So I feel very lucky that I got right into the OR, and that is how I did it. Okay, this question's from Maddie Dank. She says, how do you keep your energy up throughout your shift? So this is an interesting question. I'm lucky enough to work 4 10-hour shifts and I work only day shifts. So we start our shift at 6:30 in the morning and I'm done at 5. So I don't feel like I necessarily lack energy. I think if I worked 12-hour shifts, I definitely would. But you know, I'm a huge coffee advocate. I drink a cup of coffee in the morning on the way into work, and then I usually drink another cup around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. I do like to go to the gym right after my shift, so I do that. I try to drink a lot of water throughout the day, and then just make sure that my meals are consistent and healthy, and that helps me stay alert. This is from Erin Burgos. What is your favorite thing about being an OR nurse? What is one thing you wish you could change? I think my favorite thing about being an OR nurse is the autonomy that I feel. So we get to kind of run our room, if that makes sense. We get to run our OR. We are in charge of the patient safety and the way that the surgery kind of progresses in a lot of ways. Anesthesia obviously monitors the patient throughout as well, and the surgeon is doing the surgery, but I feel like as the nurse circulator, you really are being the patient advocate the entire time. You're able to communicate with the family and just kind of all around. You are the one in the room that is, you know, making sure that things are going smoothly, and you kind of can set the mood in the room, which I really love. I think one thing I would change about being an OR nurse is just that you don't get a ton of patient interaction. So I try to make the most out of the 5 or 10 minutes that I do get with my patient before they're, you know, under anesthesia. But the cool thing is you really get to interact with coworkers, you really get to work with surgeons and kind of perfect your craft in a way and make it enjoyable for surgeons, your coworkers, anesthesia providers, and patients to want to be in your room, to want them to have, for them to want you to be their nurse, if that makes sense. Erin also asked, do you see yourself staying as an OR nurse for your entire specialty till you retire, or would you like to pursue another avenue? So that's a great question, Erin, and I think, you know, I'm only about 1.5 years into my career as a nurse. I have already applied to nurse practitioner school, so I'm waiting to hear back from that. I don't think I've ever seen myself as an OR nurse for the rest of my career until I retire. There are nurses that do it, and I think they're absolutely amazing. It is challenging. It is a very physical job, as most nursing jobs are. However, I think ultimately I want to be able to be my own boss in a sense and not have to be just a shift worker. Like, I would love to just build deeper connections with my patients, and I love the operating room, and it's such a unique avenue of nursing, but I think eventually I would love to be a nurse practitioner, see my own patients, and build lifelong relationships. Last question from Erin is it difficult to work with surgeons? Yes and no. There are certain surgeons that are a joy to work with, and I look forward to it every single day, and there are some surgeons that, you know, don't necessarily bring the best attitude into the OR. I feel very lucky at our hospital because I've heard stories. Obviously, this is the only hospital I've ever worked, but I've heard a lot of stories about surgeons and the way that, you know, sometimes they can be in the OR, and I just feel like you're gonna get that kind of everywhere, and even in any other avenue of nursing. I think there's gonna be surgeons or doctors that you enjoy working with and doctors that you don't necessarily enjoy working with. I have not had an experience to this date, knock on wood, that has totally steered me away from being in the OR. I think overall I've had really good experiences with our surgeons. What surgical procedure do you most often see? So I am part of the neurospine team at our hospital, so I see mostly laminectomies, microdiscectomies, and spine fusions, just because that's the room that I'm in most of the time. But we do a lot of just general cases like lap choles and lap appies, and yeah, I'd say for the most part I do spines mostly. Hello Beautiful says, have you ever passed out or gotten lightheaded? I have never passed out or gotten lightheaded in the OR. Even when I was doing my student residency, my senior year, I never got lightheaded or passed out. I think it just doesn't bother me. Charlene says, how do I become a nurse? So what I would suggest, Charlene, is doing your research and applying to either an undergraduate nursing program, and you can either start with getting your associates or you can just go all the way for your bachelor's. I would suggest going right for your bachelor's degree because I think everything is kind of switching over to bachelor's. In the past, you could just have an associate's or just even a certification and you could be a nurse. So I think if you're really interested in it, then I would suggest going for your bachelor's degree. And if you already have bachelor's degree or undergraduate credits, you can do what's called an accelerated nursing program. So I had a couple other people ask about the accelerated program. My sister is actually doing this and it starts in about a month. So she had about 3 years of undergraduate credits under her belt when she decided she wanted to become a nurse. So people decide they want to become a nurse at all different times in their life. And that's what's so cool about nursing is there's a ton of different options on how to get your degree. So my sister's program, for example, is a 16-month accelerated program. So I did my schooling in 4 years. She's going to be doing hers in 16 months. And I know it seems kind of crazy that that can happen, but in my program I did all of my undergraduate credits to get a degree as well as my nursing credits. So that's why it took me 4 years. There's tons of accelerated programs out there. I know there's specifically more if you already have a degree. Like if you already have your bachelor's, there's a ton of accelerated programs that can get you done in 16 months, 18 months that are out there. So look for those and apply for those. If you want my sister's program specifically, she's going to the University of Utah and they have a 16-month BSN program even if you don't already have your bachelor's. So that one's kind of unique. I'm not sure how many of those are out there, but I know they're out there, so look for that. This is from Erica Quinos. Sorry if I said that wrong. She says, nursing school makes me feel defeated / not smart enough. How do I overcome this feeling? I feel like this is such a good question, and I think it's natural to feel those feelings at certain parts of nursing school, and even in other degrees, you know, you're gonna feel defeated at times. However, nursing school is structured to weed out the people that aren't meant to be nurses. And I know that kind of sounds harsh, but it's true. So like in our program the first year, several people got weeded out, not only just because of the idea of nursing school, but because of the way that the classes are structured, and they are very challenging. They're going to challenge you. You're gonna have to use all of your efforts. I remember nursing school as, yes, I had fun, yes, I had a great time with my friends and all that stuff, but when certain people, when some of my friends were going out, I was staying and studying, and I put a lot of time into my studies. I truly did, and I had to think every moment of every day, and everything in nursing school is cumulative. So my only advice on to how not to feel defeated and to feel smart enough is do your work at the front end and don't let it build up on you. So everything in nursing school is cumulative. So everything you learn on the first day of nursing school is going to apply to your test on the very last day and to your NCLEX exam. So stay on top of your studies, find a study buddy. My best friend Meg and I were study buddies every single day in college, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I feel like I remembered things more because of her, and when you're able to talk things out with someone else, it makes all the difference. So stay organized, figure out how you best study, and just do your best. You can only do your best. You know, you're never gonna feel like you're the smartest all the time. I definitely was not the smartest in my class. But I feel like I make a great nurse. So just remember that there's always going to be someone smarter than you that does better on a test, and there's always going to be someone that does worse on a test. So keep your eye on the prize. You can do it. Don't give up. So this is from Jessica Hunt, and she says, any tips for starting nursing school? I start in January. So I think I kind of just gave you guys an idea on some of the tips, but Jessica, I would just say figure out a way to stay organized in school, figure out your best way to study. I think that's honestly the best tip I can give you. Just know that it's going to be, you're gonna have to be devoted to your studies. So if that means giving yourself one day a week, or maybe one day every other week to go out with your friends, or to do something for yourself, or you know, to have a night out, then that's what you should do. And then the rest of the time, stick to your schedule, stick to your studies, and truly give it your all, because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging, and there's going to be times where you feel defeated and you're going to feel like you want to give up, but keep your eye on the prize. Like I said earlier in this video, there's never been a day in my life that I've regretted going to nursing school. I was able to start a career right out of college that makes good money. I feel like I have a purpose, and I feel like I'm helping people. So stay focused, do your studying, and you're gonna be great. This is from Courtney Strickland. She said, have you always known you wanted to be an RN? I can't decide what I want to do. So I wouldn't say I always knew, but I think I'm unique in the sense that I knew right when I graduated high school what I wanted to do. So people ask me why all the time, and to be honest, I'm not exactly sure why. I did take a CNA course, Certified Nurse Assistant course, my senior year of high school. It was something that our high school offered, and my sister actually did that course as well. And we got to learn a lot of like the basics of nursing. So I think that was kind of like my first insight into nursing, and I really didn't know what all it entailed, but I knew that I wanted to do it. I just had a gut feeling, and so I applied to all my nursing programs, got into TCU, got some scholarship, and decided to do it. And then the 4 years I was there, I never backed out. I never had any doubt that this was what I wanted to do, and so I just ran with it, and thankfully I've loved it. So do you think you'll stay in OR or hop to the floor for a second? So this was a question that I kind of answered earlier. I don't think I'll ever hop to the floor. The only other specialty I could see myself working in a hospital is the ICU. I was in the ICU myself back in March for 2 weeks, and I have such a huge appreciation for ICU nurses after my experience. So I think I could see myself doing that, but like I said earlier, I am striving to get my nurse practitioner degree, so hopefully in 2 years or so, 2.5 years, I will actually not be in the hospital setting unless I decide as a nurse practitioner to work for a surgeon and still do surgeries in the OR. But I kind of eventually hope to be in more of the clinic setting where I can build those relationships with patients and do that. So, and that was from Allison RN. Now on to YouTube to answer those questions. This is from Nurse Noriega, and she says, can you do a video regarding your job role? So as a nurse circulator, your job encompasses a whole bunch of things. Like I talked about earlier, you are running your OR. So you are assigned an OR for the day, and you're assigned the surgeries that are in that room for the day. So those become your patients. Say I have 3 surgeries in OR 2 on any given day. Those are my surgeries for the day, and those are my patients. So early in the morning, you go in and you see what you're doing for the day. We have a little meeting at the board, and then we break and you go and start your day. So if my surgery is at 7:30 in the morning, I'm gonna go right into my OR and start getting things set up. So that means getting the bed set up for that specific procedure, making sure all the right equipment is in that room, working with the scrub tech to set up the sterile field and make sure we have all the medications and positioning devices and everything that we need for that procedure based on that surgeon's preference card. So depending on how your hospital does it, each surgeon has their own way of doing things and how they want things, so that is what you kind of follow. So it's not like you have to remember everything on the top of your head. Then once the sterile field is set up and we've counted the instruments and all of that, I go out to pre-op and I interview my patient. So I introduce myself. Hi, I'm Maddie. I'm going to be the nurse in the operating room with you today. And I go through my pre-op checklist with them, kind of alongside the pre-op nurse, and we make sure that all the consents are signed, that their H&P is verified, their history and physical is verified, and that they have an anesthesia consent before we can ever go back for surgery. And we make sure that they're not pregnant, obviously. And so then once all of that's checked off, I take my patient back to surgery and get them in the room, get them moved over onto the OR bed. I help anesthesia put the patient to sleep. So I help with intubation and all of that, anything that they might need. And then I position the patient for that specific procedure and prep the patient. So prep whatever site we're doing. Say we're doing a spine surgery. I prep the back with an antiseptic solution, and then we call the surgeons into the room. The surgeons come in, we start the procedure, and I plug in all the equipment that they throw off the sterile field, make sure everything's hooked up and ready to use, and then at that point I sit down at my computer and start charting. Most days I don't actually get to just sit down and chart the whole time. There's things that they need throughout the procedure that we didn't foresee, or maybe they want something special. So I run out to the sterile core and get supplies and open supplies. I help out anesthesia if they need anything like labs or blood sugars or anything like that. And at the end of the case, we kind of clean everything up, help anesthesia wake the patient up, move the patient back onto their stretcher, and then roll the patient off to the post-anesthesia care unit, which is called the PACU, which my nurses, you will know this. And I hand off my patient to the PACU nurse. That patient is now in the PACU nurse's care, and my job with that patient is mostly done. I go back and finish my charting, and then I move on to the next patient. So it's a very fast-paced work environment, and it's a lot of fun, honestly. And you kind of get to, depending on the day, you get to do, 1 to 5 cases in a day. So it's very fast paced and you have to think quick on your feet. Loose is, after graduating, did you have to have other experience before becoming an operating room nurse? So as I explained earlier, I did not have to have any other experience. Certain programs you will. So if I were to go apply for other programs now, it would be a lot easier for me to get a job. So this question is from Taylor Oliver, and she asks, what is some advice you have for how to study or how to get through difficult classes? Any tips or tricks to help getting your BSN a little easier? Love your channel so much, XOXO. Thanks, Taylor. So what I would say, my biggest things were figure out, like, per class, per professor, figure out how they're gonna teach. So if they're gonna teach and they're gonna give you the PowerPoints for every single class, don't bother buying the textbook, and don't worry about reading word for word every single thing that they tell you to read. Focus on the PowerPoints. They're gonna give them to you. Create a study guide that you've typed out in a way that it's really easy for you to read. So this is something my best friend Meg and I would split up for most classes. We would say, okay, you do this section to this section, I'll do this section to this section. We'd make one big study guide and print it out. Have something tactile on paper that's easy to read and that you've created, because you kind of have already been through all the information at least once at this point. And then what my friend Meg and I would do is we would meet up at a coffee shop, or in our case Central Market, which was the grocery store, and we would sit across from each other and we would go through the entire study guide. So we would write everything out, literally every word. We would write the entire study guide out, even if it was 25 pages. We'd go through and write out the entire thing and make handwritten sheets with colorful pens, and made it colorful and succinct and everything like that, so that it was nice to look at. And we would seriously do that all the way through once, and then if we had time, we would, on a different day before the test, we would go through it at least 1 or 2 more times. So that's my biggest tip for nursing school. Find the best way that you study, find a study buddy, and be consistent. Stick to what works for you. You're gonna do great, Taylor. What's your best advice for a new nurse? My best advice for a new nurse is to totally submerge yourself in your environment. So get to know your coworkers, always ask questions. No question is a bad question when you're a new nurse, honestly. Every single other person there, even like if you're in the OR, even the scrub techs that don't do nursing things but have worked with nurses for years, if they've been there for years, take their advice, ask them questions. Never stop learning from them, because they've been there and you haven't. So they know, they're the experts on how your floor or your unit runs. And just be respectful, be kind to everybody, smile a lot, and you will get through it. Can you do a video about your nursing journey? Like how nursing school was for you and your experience since then. So this is Melissa Garcia. So I feel like Melissa, this video has somewhat answered that, but my experience as a nurse has been amazing. Through school, like I said earlier, very challenging. There were times when I wanted to not study and I wanted to do other things, and I think because I had my sights set on being a nurse for about 7 years now, I think it was easier for me to give up one night going out, or give up, going to an event or something like that, because I knew that in the long run it was going to be beneficial and that I was going to graduate get my nursing degree and be able to go and do something that I really love. This is from Alicia Rutkowski, and she says, hey, I am a student planning on being a nurse. How was your journey? What did you do to become a nurse? How long did it take you? Please answer these questions. I really want to become a nurse, but I don't know how long it will take me. So I kind of answered this question earlier, but for me it took 4 years, but that's because I went directly from high school into a Bachelor's of Science of Nursing program that was a 4-year program. So like I said, there are a ton of programs out there to where you can get your associates first if you want to, start working as an LPN, and then you can advance your degree and get your bachelor's. I know a lot of hospitals will pay for you to further your education, so that is a good step. However, I would definitely recommend going right into a bachelor's program because most hospitals I think are going to start hiring mostly just with your bachelor's. So that would be my advice. There's also programs, like I said, that take 16 or 18 months to finish, so it's not that much time in the grand scheme of things. Even if it does take you a little bit longer and you're going to work throughout, accelerated program probably isn't the way to go, and a standardized nursing program would be the best way because you can do those, most of them online, I think, at this point, and then you can just do your clinicals whenever you have days off if you have to pay your way through school. So those are kind of the options there. And then I had another question, I can't find it right now, but I did have another question about the difference between being a scrub nurse and a circulating nurse. So in my residency program, when I was hired on, I got to learn 3 months of being a scrub nurse and 3 months of being a circulating nurse. So the majority of my job I spend circulating, but there are days when we're low on scrub techs and I will be a scrub nurse. So being a scrub nurse means you're actually scrubbed into the surgery and you set up the sterile field, you dress the surgeon when they come in their sterile gown and gloves, and you're actually at the field assisting the surgeon, passing them instruments, kind of really being hands-on with the surgery. Whereas the circulating nurse is all those things I mentioned earlier, where you are the patient advocate, responsible for the patient and how the surgery goes, kind of the mood of the room, documenting and kind of running your OR. Not scrubbed in, still in your OR scrubs and your OR hat and your OR mask, but you're not scrubbed in at the field assisting the surgeon directly. I think that is going to wrap it up for today. I hope I answered all of your questions. I tried to answer as many as I could, and if I missed your question, please comment them down below and I would be happy to address your questions, and I'm happy to do another video if you guys are interested in that. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for all your questions. I absolutely love doing videos like this. The reason I created my YouTube channel is to help people, and I am overwhelmed by the amount of people that have reached out, future nurses, and I think you guys are all going to be amazing nurses. I cannot wait to see all of your journeys unfold, and thank you so much for following my journey as a nurse. Thank you guys so much. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and like this video. I will see you guys back in a couple days. I love you guys, and I'll see you soon.